Hey everybody, welcome into the Irish NFL show. It's week 13. It seems like only yesterday we were sitting in Dublin recording the season preview. Some great matchups this week. The Cowboys winning on Thursday Night Football. Kicking off tonight's show, we are delighted to be joined by the first analytics expert with NFL Media, Cynthia Frelund. She can be found on obviously NFL Media platforms, on NFL Fantasy Live each night at 11 o'clock on Sky Sports NFL, and obviously on NFL Game Day on a Sunday. Cynthia, very, very warm welcome to the Irish NFL show. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Cynthia, we ask every guest this. I genuinely have no idea. Have you any Irish heritage? Have you been to Ireland before, or even over to London for a game?
I actually grew up in Luxembourg. So I've been to Ireland a number of times. I spent like a good amount of time in Dublin, and we did like a big tour all over the place. And we still have like my Waterford crystal that we got at Waterford because, you know, Americans, that's what we do when we're there, right? So no, I've spent a good amount of time in Ireland. I loved it.
Well, we're happy to hear that, and the fact that you toured around even to see the country. So that's fantastic. Cynthia, I suppose diving straight into potentially the kind of most interesting division in football, the NFC West, and you did a pretty good job in terms of your predictions pre-season. You said that the Seahawks are going to struggle a little bit. They've maybe struggled a bit more than any of us even thought. You said to keep an eye on the Cards defense, and you expected big things from Chandler Jones. You had concerns about the Rams, particularly their O-line, and you were pretty high on the 49ers, who obviously didn't start so well, but have suddenly found some form. Just wondering, as we enter week 13, what your thoughts are now.
I think that, well, the Cardinals could win like something like 13 games now, like looking over kind of what's going on now. Of course, I didn't know they were going to win that many games. I thought that they would probably finish second. I thought that the 49ers schedule and how favorable at least it started would be a good thing for them. But there's always injuries. So I think that the Niners will end up making the playoffs. I think it's going to go Cardinals, and then it'll be interesting to see between the Niners and the Rams who can come out ahead. But I actually think three of these teams make it to the playoffs, and not the Seahawks, obviously.
Cynthia, going into the season, a lot of people felt that the Cleveland Browns had a great opportunity to potentially go to the Super Bowl, building on a successful season last year. But even in the fancy leagues, a lot of people were saying take Chubb, take Hunt. They've obviously had a lot of injuries, and Baker Mayfield has been playing with injuries as well. Are you surprised how the drop off? I know they're still in the race potentially, but it's not at the expectations which people felt they would be.
Yeah, it's interesting because first of all, I don't think anyone saw the Bengals being as good as they are, especially because, and I'll be the first to admit, I think their O-line heading into the season, I was like, this is bad news for Joe Burrow, but they've created a good scheme, and now they're like, 20th. So they're way better than I thought they would be. I thought they'd be like 32nd, 31st, right? So I think the interesting thing there is the division's actually quite difficult, and the Ravens have been getting lucky. I mean, they have 4 games that they took like improbable, crazy, field goals that are history making, and you usually don't win if you turn the ball over 4 times, like stuff like, so I think that division is just a little nuts. And I think injuries have really hit the Browns pretty hard. I mean, right tackle Jack Conklin is a huge loss, and that is kind of the strength of their team, right? So, and then you've seen obviously Hunt and then Chubb missed games for various reasons, but you got to kind of get on paper, they're awesome. But when it comes to actually playing, I mean, I don't know how many injuries Baker Mayfield has. It feels like there's like 15 or 16 on the list. So
Probably another one this weekend. Who knows what's going to happen? This has been the season of completely unpredictable results. I mean, we were at Tottenham for the Jaguars field goal, the last second. That feels like 5 minutes ago. But for you, who has been the standout or the team that surprised you most this season going into week 13?
I guess I would have to say the Patriots, not because I didn't think that they had a good team. I knew their defense would be good, but the fact that they were able to, I believe the reports that they didn't know they were going to be able to take Mac Jones. Like, they didn't know. I mean, they were going to start with Cam Newton, for goodness sake. So, they did all of the things in free agency that would support a Mac Jones, meaning they went and got heavy personnel, a lot more tight ends. They brought in 2 top tier tight ends in terms of free agents. They spent a lot of money, and they did get some people back who had opted out from COVID, especially on the defense. So you knew the defense was going to be good, but I don't think at least I wasn't sure that this offense was going to look the way that it has, especially considering there are a bunch of very credible reports out there that they were sincerely thinking about taking Elijah Vera Tucker, who's the guard who's now on the Jets. And can you imagine how different this whole draft would have shaken out had they went with a guard instead of Mac Jones?
Yeah, it would be certainly could be very, very different in New England. One team who the model was high on, obviously, before the season started was the Washington football team, but they got off to a poor start. They then lose Montez Sweat and Chase Young, and yet since then they've won 3 on the bounce. What do you think has led to them being able to win despite losing those 2 guys?
Well, their schedule did start off a little bit tricky, and remember, they still have the entire, like the NFC East is far from being decided because they're backloaded with their schedule of playing each other. So we don't really even know what we're looking at yet. And they had a hard start. They were playing the first place schedule. So because they finish in first, they have to play the hardest schedule that punishes them, right? So in theory, but look, when you lose Ryan Fitzpatrick so early, and they had probably thought about, they did not probably imagine they'd be having to roll with Taylor Heineke, especially for this many games. I think what you're seeing is, I think you're finally seeing the O-line play a lot better. Brandon Sheriff especially has been really helpful. You see the run game working. I mean, and J.D. McKissick's not going to play this week, but you saw that kind of 1-2 punch of the Antonio Gibson. And I would imagine now you see a good Logan Thomas uptick in catches because of the short passes to keep Taylor Heineke. He's had like a over 72% completion percentage now in 3 games. So how do you do that? It's with short passes. You don't get those from deep passes.
Cynthia, the Chargers, leading into the season, a lot of people felt the Chargers were going to make that push towards the playoffs this year. New head coach, started off, Herbert, has one of the prettiest long balls in the game, deep balls. The last few weeks has been inconsistent. Are you surprised how it's fallen off slightly, or do you think they'll get it back and just about make the playoffs?
What's funny is ever since I moved to Los Angeles in 2016, every preseason like, this is the Chargers year. And then it's like something happens. But I actually do like Justin Herbert a lot. And I think he is a very good long-term quarterback. He's one of the, you want the league to be full of young quarterbacks who are really good. And he's one of those who I would say is like a great thing that we have going forward just in the league overall for the health of the league. But, it's interesting because what the Chargers have faltered on. They started off strong. They were going for on 4th down. They had schemes that were supporting, they were the best 4th down conversion team in the league for several weeks. And they had some really nice things going on. Some really well executed, opportunities. Mike Williams started off the season just so strong with his new haircut. He came out here with that fresh cut. So, but what happens is, I think maybe they showed us a little too much of the playbook too early. And I think now you'll see the good players are still really good. Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams is included. But now you have to see, okay, as defenses are starting to figure out what are the tricks that this team's going to pull in this season. Now, unfortunately, the Chargers defense, which is a very good defense, but it's still, there's some areas where, the run game has been a consistent problem for the entire season. And yeah, there's some injuries, but I don't know if a Drew Tranquill is going to make a difference, right? I don't know if just one player is going to be the difference. And it's very hard. If you consistently allow a team to run on you, it is very, very hard to continually win games. It just is. And they've been poor in the run defense game this entire season.
Cynthia, granted it's the start of the weekend, but is there any game that stands out to you already at the start of the weekend going ahead this weekend where you could see maybe a potential shock or maybe something that's more closer that we might think? for me, I'm looking at that Chargers game on Sunday thinking it could be a banana skin.
That's the game I'm most interested in watching, from because the Chargers seem to be on the downturn and the Bengals seems to be on the upturn. And this will be really important for both teams, actually, if they want to make the playoffs. AFC has 12 teams that are above 500. That's ridiculous. It's the AFC just very, very strong in general. You're going to see the AFC with just teams. NFC, it's possible that one of these NFC teams gets in at 9-8, which is just really gnarly. Whereas it probably takes 11 wins to really be guaranteed that you're going to, 10 will get in. but all those tiebreakers and cascade, blah, 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 like if then scenarios, like way too long to even try to figure out. I'd be here for like 15 podcasts if you did that. So, look, like you gotta, whoever wins this game, it's, if the Chargers don't win this game, it's going to be very hard for them to then really make a true playoff run or even make the playoffs for that matter. So I think that's interesting. But I think actually my one upset is I think Washington upsets Vegas. So I think that's even without JD McKissick, I think that's the one where I'm really interested to see, because obviously we saw Raiders on Thanksgiving Day, so last Thursday, and they looked awesome, and they obviously beat the Cowboys, but I've also seen the Raiders look really horrible for 2 weeks prior to that. So who are the Raiders? I don't know. I know that their defense gets the most pressure in terms of, pressure percentage in the NFL, but I don't think their offensive line, especially in the middle, is garbage. And that's really hard, even if Derek Carr is awesome, which he has played so well this season, but the middle of your O-line not helping you out it's going to be tough on anyone.
Cynthia, I suppose a decade ago, we had Bill Belichick saying stats are for losers, and we've come a long way since then. This season, we've seen teams kind of go for it more on fourth down than ever before. And a lot of that is down to analytics, despite, I think, what Mike Tomlin might say. But I suppose I'm interested, like, this is your world. Do you think in terms of, is it that it's a new generation of coaches? Like, is there somewhere you think we might see the next step after this super aggressiveness on fourth down? What might next gen stats lead to?
So the interesting part about like going for it on fourth down now is, remember, the supply of players that we have come from college. So what's going on in the college game directly influences what's possible in the pro game. Like it's just the way supply and demand works, right? So, ultimately part of the reason why going for it on fourth down, there's kind of two main things. The first is that you have a lot of defensive imbalance. So if you're planning on it and going for fourth down and you have two plays called and you don't need to change your personnel, then you have your third down personnel in on fourth down, and the defense does too, right? So they could be thrown off balance. So why would it's 3rd and 8, right? Which is typically a situation where you would pass the ball. Well, if you're going to play it as 2 downs, then you could run the ball on that first down and maybe pick up all 8 yards, right? Or because you're throwing people off balance. Do they play man in that situation, or do they stick with zone, or what are they going to do, right? So it's really a strategic question. And then if you get that second play in pretty quick, then you can throw them off balance yet again. So it's really about kind of that offensive advantage. And part of that is because the rules have evolved to favor the offense a bit more. So teams are smart to take advantage of that. And also, if you look at the college game and the explosion of points in the NCAA game, for us, it's because offenses come up with weirdo tricks and these kids are used to the tricks. And that's kind of some of the things that really happen. Like running backs, it's rare to see like a true like running back. Most of these guys coming out of college are pass catching backs now. It's you rarely see like a real downhill runner that just like ball carrier, like you don't see MJD anymore, right? They all look a lot more like Alvin Kamara. So it's interesting to see it, and part of that is because O-lines are different, and teaching O-line differently, and then even younger kids who maybe would have played running back, they're switching them to safety because the way that so it's a lot of, you have to kind of keep track of like where the trends are for the underclassmen, so that as they become up towards becoming the NFL, then you get to see, Mac Jones, and I love that Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, all of them have analytics departments, to be clear. And Bill Belichick probably pioneered it with Ernie Adams. So he can say we're losers all we want, but he's told me I'm not a loser to my face, so we're going to go with that. But but at the end of the day, it's really about getting a strategic edge on your opponents. And the more that teams practice it, and they are practicing it more, then the more confident they are doing it. It doesn't seem like this one-off thing like, oh no, we're sticking all of our, like, we're so worried, like, oh my gosh, we're sticking all of our entire game on this one call. It's not like that, right? It's like, all right, we're specifically doing this in this situation because this is where we think we have an edge.
Cynthia, over the past 12 months, we've been very fortunate to interview a number of your colleagues from NFL Network. And the recurring theme is it's like a family there, and everybody seems to enjoy working together. Any particular stories from your time working there? Anything stand out that you want to share?
I will tell you, I used to work at ESPN too, and it is a family here for sure. And it's not to say anything bad about ESPN. They're just much larger, and it's just a different thing. But, I will say, especially this season, we added Rachel Bonetta to two of the shows that I'm on, Game Day Morning and Game Day View, which is a show where we pick everything. And, it's been really nice to have other places be like, women, get competitive. And here it's like really nice. And after this, I have lunch with one of our other young hires, and she's asking me about NFTs and how to grow in that space. So we really do have like a nice family. And I will tell you, like, if you would have told me 5 years ago when I came over here that, Michael Irvin would be someone who calls me at home and makes sure I'm okay anytime I'm like not like I would have, Steve Mariucci, okay, I might have believed it because we're both from Michigan and he's kind of like an old grandpa type, like best with. But but if you would have told me like Michael Irvin would like send us, my family, my dad had been sick, Irv will like drop everything. What can I do? Do you need me to make calls? Like what, anything. So and that goes for literally everyone here. Like I'm telling you, it's a very special place. So feel very lucky to work here with these people.
We interviewed Colleen Wolfe last week as part of our Thanksgiving special, and she couldn't stop raving about Michael Irvin. Obviously, she works with him on the Thursday night football coverage, and she was raving about what a nice guy he is and how he looks after her as well. So.
He does. He's and Colleen's great. She's like, the funny part is I barely get to see her because she's on the road so often. So, but we have like, I think in like 2 weeks when we have Chargers and Chiefs here, and we're like, we're having a girls' night the week out, and everyone's like, yes, we're all in. So it's great. I'm very excited. Like it's good. We really do have like a very nice group of people here.
The great thing with the international expansion as well, Cynthia, is we get to see you, obviously, as you mentioned at the start, NFL Fantasy Live each night on Sky Sports, and obviously the odd time on Total Access and other NFL media outlets. I want to thank you so much for coming on. You're welcome on any time, and wish you all the best over the rest of the season. It's hard to believe we are literally 7 weeks from the end, or 8 weeks. So
how can you? I can't even believe it. Anyways, I really appreciate you guys having me. I love that you love it so much. I'm curious. I got to ask you before you go, which team is on your broadcast? Which team do you guys see the most? Because my sister lives in Denmark and they only see Packers.
We have Red Zone on one channel every Sunday, and then there'll be a game at 6 o'clock our time, which is the 1 o'clock slate, and then in the afternoon. But they mix it up. Every team gets shown throughout the season, and then you've got the Thursday and Monday games live on Sunday Night Football. So we get everything.
Good. Because it seems that for whatever reason, my sister tells me, she's like, and it's even funnier because I'm like, well, at least make it like the Minnesota Vikings or something that would make sense, right? No, it's only Green Bay Packers. Like they get Packers games and then they'll mix up other ones. But and we're from Michigan, so she's like, what the heck? Like now I have to watch Aaron Rodgers even more. Like the Lions are terrible, so that's why.
It's pretty cool, and obviously the new NFL deal as well. We get to see you a lot more often as well, and the team, and we've had Adam Rank on as well. So look, Cynthia. Yeah, he's as we say here, he's great crack. He's good fun. But massive thanks, Cindy, for coming on, and at C Frelund on Twitter, and hopefully we get to speak to you again soon. And thanks so much.
Anytime. Thank you so much for having me.
That was Cynthia Frelund from NFL Network. Welcome in, folks. It is week 13 of the NFL season. Mark isn't here tonight. I think Brian's going to join us very shortly, Colin, yeah? You're on mute.
I think Brian may have taken a bathroom break.
I think he may have. Hold on. We've got big breaking news. We are delighted to be joined by Brian O'Leary. Brian, hello.
Good evening, gents. What a great introduction. I don't know where that music came from, Michael. I think you must be getting the old romantic hits out again for the wife.
Well, Brian, it was obviously welcome everyone. Week 13 Irish NFL show presented by Matchbook Betting Exchange and our friends over at Trust Gaming. Brian, great to hear from Cynthia.
Yeah, great. It was a very insightful interview. It was good to hear her thoughts on numerous teams. I think we did it justice for fans over this side of the world in terms of trying to get an avenue on each team as much as we could. And we felt there was a few teams that needed a bit of love because they've had a few difficult weeks. And then obviously a few other teams have done really well. But no, it's great to have her on, and great to see her, like the NFL Network people supporting the show, which they've done over the past 12 months because we've had some really good guests on throughout that time.
Yeah, Colin, big thanks to NFL Network over the last few months and I guess over the last year. But big week 13. Any decent games, Colin, this week? Any?
Just a few this week. I think there'll be some interesting matchups. Possibly some you might think on paper some mismatches, but we've already seen this season how it can work out. We saw the Bills somehow lose to the Jaguars. We saw the Titans somehow lose to the Jets. So any given Sunday, anything can happen in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. We are going to go full screen tonight because we've got some lovely graphics. Hope. Right. Here we go. How many games is there this week? Like what, 12, 13? Is it?
Enough. Let's put it like that.
Brian, you're very small. You're like in first year in school. There we go. Right. Bucks 8-3, Falcons 5-6. Obviously, great to have Cynthia on, and thanks again to Cynthia. Let's get straight into it because Super Bowl champion Bucks going up against the Falcons. Colin, surely Tom Brady wins this one. No?
Well, he should, simple as that. But it is obviously a bit of a rivalry. But I mean, it's kind of a weird season in some ways for Brady, right? Because he leads the league in terms of passing attempts, completions, and touchdowns. But he's thrown an interception in 4 straight games now, and at other times, he just hasn't looked quite himself. But he's still Tom Brady. They're still the Bucs. They've had some interesting off the field issues and some suspensions, which has affected certainly their passing game. But all of a sudden, Leonard Fournette has developed a pass catching aspect to his game. And I think he has 23 receptions over the past 3 games or thereabouts. Obviously had a huge game last week, came up really, really big against the Colts, who couldn't seem to do anything against him. And Gronk, another 100-yard game. He's one shy of Tony Gonzalez for tying the most in NFL history. And so I imagine that's what they're going to lean on again this week. Godwin and Evans have flashed at times, but have disappointed at others. For the Falcons, look, we saw what the Cowboys and the Patriots did to this Falcons defense. That would be a huge concern. And Matt Ryan, after playing so well, has had an absolutely horrendous last few games. The worst QBR in the league. I think he was sacked 4 times by the Pats last week, and taken a huge number of sacks. If you're the Falcons, look, there's always the chance, and it's going to come down to Cordarrelle Patterson, I think, who has just had the X factor this season. He's been fantastic. I'm interested to see what he can do against this kind of stout Bucs defense. And AJ Terrell has been really good, but I'm going to go for the Bucs to win this and go to 9-3.
Everybody kind of references the Falcons when they play Brady because of that Super Bowl, but Brady's still 9-0 in his career versus the Falcons. He owns the Falcons. Chris Godwin owns the Falcons. He's had a touchdown in the last 6 games against them. And you kind of made some very valid points around how inconsistent this Falcons offense has been. And they rebounded last week against the Jags, but I think large parts of that were down to the fact that Cordarrelle Patterson, who's been standout player this season, we all felt it might have been Kyle Pitts, but it's been Patterson, 4 rushing touchdowns, 5 passing touchdowns. I mean, not many players in the league are getting those type of stats on both sides of the ball. I know Deebo Samuel is running them close because he's had such a good season for the 49ers. Last year's game was interesting. Falcons weren't great last year, but they ran them close in Atlanta. But inevitably, in the end, the Bucs found a way to win. I think it's a similar scenario here. I think the Bucs will win. I don't think it'll be a blowout as a lot of people seem to think, but I think in the end they'll win comfortably. It'll be a comfortable enough game in the end. But I think the Falcons will hang around for a while.
No Mark tonight. Mark is AWOL. I'm thinking of you, Mark, and we'll see you soon. Mark's going with the Bucs. Lovely pick from Mark. Thank you for your picks, Mark. Thanks to Matchbook, who are presenting every one of our Week 13 picks. I need to win in fantasy this week. My tight end is Rob Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski last week, 123 yards rushing. The overnight during the United-Arsenal game, the news broke about Antonio Brown with the whole COVID cert, etc. I don't know what it's called. Like we call it the COVID cert. Anyway, didn't have a COVID cert. I actually misread the tweet as the other guy was Mike Evans. And I was like, oh my God, gotta get Gronk starting here. And we're gonna get is it Johnson or whatever in. It wasn't Mike Evans, but Antonio Brown for 3 games. He's accepted the penalty as well. This game will be over at halftime, boys. The Bucs will win by 20 or 30. Tom Brady's gonna have 4 passing touchdowns, 350 plus yards. Rob Gronkowski is gonna go for 150 on the day. Do you reckon he get in the Hall of Fame if Tony Gonzalez is in it, or what's the
conversation today? Michael, he did have a cert. He did have the COVID. He just didn't have a valid one. It's like that fake
so he did have it, but I thought it was fake. So
I think it had a picture of McLovin on it.
Yeah, it's like when you were 17 years of age and you had that fake ID to get you into the bars when you tend to be 18 years of age. Get him over the line and get him into training camp. I saw someone last night refer to Rodgers' situation being very similar. It wasn't, because Rodgers was taking the daily tests as part of the protocols. Antonio Brown, who wasn't vaccinated, wasn't. So 2 very different scenarios, and the league have hit him hard. 3 games.
Well, I seen a tweet yesterday that Rodgers obviously had his feet out, and Antonio Brown did. And Antonio Brown's feet are
well, to be on the ground for a while anyway.
I'll come back to that. Anyway, look, a full house to kick us off. Very, harmony. Let's see if we can keep it that way. Obviously, the picks presented by Matchbook. Yes, Brad.
One of the easier ones to kick off. Let's be fair.
Well, this could be an even easier one. The Cardinals 9-2, the Bears 4-7. Kyler Murray should be back in this game. Cardinals starting to get the guys back. Kyler Murray hasn't just had a bye week. Colin, he's had a bye month. I mean, surely, if you're a Cardinals fan, you're feeling very confident here, not just for this game, but for the stretch over the next month.
Yeah, we haven't seen Kyler since week 8, but I saw Kingsbury say that it's going to be a game time decision for him and D-Hop. So, I thought he'd be back, but obviously we'll just have to wait and see. Look, the Bears were on a 5-game losing streak, and then they got to play the Lions, and they just about beat the Lions, even though Andy Dalton threw for 300 yards, but they just about scraped over the line. Obviously, if Murray plays, they'll be facing a much better offense, but they're coming up against a serious defense. This Cardinals defense has been really, really good. And the worry for the Bears is the fact that they have given up the most sacks in the league. It doesn't really matter whether it's Dalton or Fields back there. So I could see Chandler Jones having a big, big day. The best way to get at this Cards team is on the ground. So David Montgomery, but I don't know if they're going to be explosive enough to take advantage of that. Goff put up decent numbers on the Bears, which would be a concern as well. I think that the biggest hope for the Bears in this is probably Robert Quinn. He has 11 sacks, which puts him joint 4th on the leaderboard, and he had 3.5 last week. So the Cards do give up sacks. They've given up 26 on the season, more than 2 per game. So that could be a factor, but I would say that the Cards should do enough to move to 10-2.
And Chicago media saying late Friday evening that Justin Fields may not play on Sunday. More likely Andy Dalton to play, and Tevin Jenkins is finally going to be activated as well.
Yeah, well, I hadn't seen the Jenkins news, but I have seen the Cowboys. I have seen the Bears news, which is that Andy Dalton is going to play as quarterback, and I've also seen news that D-Hop is going to be active for the Cards in this game as well. Kyler Murray will be a more game time decision, as Colin alluded to. But they're 6-0 on the road. Like, they've won every game on the road this year, the Cardinals team. And in 9 of the games in which they played this season, they've held teams under 20 points against the Bears offense, which Colin touched on last week in terms of the Thanksgiving game. They got over the line. They started over the line against let's be honest, a shambolic Lions team at this stage. They're averaging 169 yards per game this season. I mean, there's very few games that have gone over 200, and they're hitting records that they haven't hit for the wrong reason since 2018. Struggling to see where the Bears are going to come out of this game with a win. They've lost 5 of the last 6 games, and we touched on that 6th game was in fact the win last week against the Lions. So it's hard to get too excited. For the Bears, it's another day struggling offensively. Cardinals are going to win. Expect Kyler Murray to play and expect a big bounce back from this offense that has done very well in the meantime with Kyler Murray out. And Colt McCoy, with the exception of that game against the Panthers, has won games with him a quarterback, which has surprised us all. So for me, you can't say anything else but a Cards win.
Mark is going with the Cards. So far, so good in terms of all our picks tonight. Well, I said last week on the Thanksgiving special, which it was really enjoyable show. Really enjoyed it last week, lads. That Andy Dalton starting gives the Bears a better chance, and I still agree with that. I don't think with the injury that Justin Fields has that he should see the field again this season as a starter. Personally, I think he needs to be rested now. He's clearly banged up badly. The Bears having a shot at going to the playoffs, but that is just my opinion. Andy Dalton gives him a better chance. Andy Dalton had more fantasy points than Patrick Mahomes last week. So you can take that way as well. For me, I just can't see how the Bears are going to get it going. There's one thing talking about Mooney and Montgomery, but even with McCoy, the Cardinals will win this game and win it comfortably. And this game could be over by the half. It could be over by the early third quarter. And it doesn't matter that it's a Soldier Field because Nagy's Bears will not get it done. And I would also question, why is Tevin Jenkins coming into a game like this? At this
stage of the season, I could give you a valid reason as to why.
I can see why, but I would leave him for another week or so personally. But I'm not a coach in the NFL. I haven't got a clue.
Well, they've got tough games coming up. Like they're going to play the Packers in a couple of weeks. But I was just going to make the point there. You're asking why Justin Fields, potentially shutting Justin Fields down for the season. I don't know what's the gain from that, because it's not a tanking situation for the Bears because they've no first-round pick. So you'd rather.
I wouldn't want him to get injured again, Brian, very quickly if he took another hit.
Well, that's a fair point. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. But I think that they probably haven't seen. I don't know what your thoughts are in terms of what you feel you've seen enough. Have we seen enough of him this season? Yeah, he's had some good spots, but we've seen games where he's gone into Tampa Bay and he's self-destructed, and we saw him in Cleveland in his first game, and he was very poor. I think back to the game against the 49ers at home, he played very well. He had that great touchdown. And the game in Pittsburgh, people felt he was progressing. So I still think they want to see a little bit more of him. And if it means him playing 2 or 3 games toward the end of the season, I think that would happen.
Yeah, I think he has to be right, but I think if he is, you want to see what you have. I mean, I don't think Matt Nagy handled it particularly well at the start, and therefore you didn't get Fields to see as much as you wanted. I'm of the opinion that with first round QBs, just play them, and because the growing pains have to be there, and I just think Andy Dalton isn't the long-term answer. You hope Fields is, but you're not going to know unless you play him. But yeah, he has to be right. I mean, we saw last year Drew Brees come back from the rib injury, and he had to come back because the Saints had the playoff push, but he wasn't right. So you got to make sure he is right, because you don't want a longer term. But if he is, I do think he'll be back in for the last couple of games at least.
Should be a decent game regardless. To see what happens. That game obviously on Red Zone this weekend on Sky on Game Pass as well. Irish NFL show presented by Matchbook Betting Exchange and Trust Gaming. Week 13, we're going to look now at what promises to be, and Cynthia Frelund mentioned as well, lads, this Bengals Chargers game. It's in Cincinnati. The Bengals are 7-4. The Chargers 6-5 column with 2 AFC West teams playing each other, and the Raiders having what could be argued, we'll see later on, as a potentially banana skin or difficult matchup against WFT. A massive game for the Chargers, but also a huge game for the Bengals in a division which is very, I would say, uncertain at the minute with certain teams.
Yeah, well, I mean, for the Bengals, they've obviously got the Ravens and the Steelers going up against each other as well. So there's both teams have a lot to play for. To me, I suppose the 2 keys, I think, to this are, can the Chargers stop Mixon, who went for 160 yards last week, 120 the week prior, and he scored at least a touchdown in his past 5 games. Going on the evidence I saw with my own eyes last week, no, they can't. So I'm very interested to see, because look, Staley is obviously a very good coach, but we are 13 weeks in at this point. Over the opening 12 weeks, they haven't been able to stop the run. They've got to come up with something magic, I think, to do it. The other thing, I suppose, that Burrow has been clean for the past 2 weeks, which has really helped, and a lot of that is because they've been able to lean into Mixon. The Chargers are very good against the pass, but the fact that the I suppose the Bengals have other options apart from just Jamar Chase. We've seen Chase, slow a lot over the last number of weeks, but the Bengals have been able to go to other receivers. I think for the Chargers, it's got to come down to Mike Williams. When Herbert and Mike Williams are on the same page, it's fantastic, but all too frequently, that's not the case. And when they're not on the same page, it is horrid. So that would be the concern that I would have. I also think the Chargers have given up a number of sacks. Broncos got to Herbert 3 times. Trey Hendrickson, who's come in and been a really good free agency signing for the Bengals, has 11 sacks. I think he's going to add to it. I'm going to take the Bengals to win this and go to 8-4.
Yeah, look, this Chargers team, we've discussed them time and time again. I know at the start of the season, I was only today looking through our picks at the start of the season in terms of what we felt it was going to be divisional winners, wild cards, and Chargers were high up there across the board. But this inconsistency is particularly on this defense, and Columns touched on it. If they don't get this defense sorted, in the long run, they're not going to make the playoffs. Or if they are, they're going to be certainly in and out very quickly. 7 games in a row, they've given up 24 plus points, 300 yards passing, and then obviously the rushing situation. To do that 7 games in a row and be 6-5, you could argue it shows the attributes of how good this offense is, because this offense is saving them. But can it save them in the long run? I find it hard to see how it's going to save them against a team that have put up 30 points in 5 of their last 6 games. And that's the Bengals, who are consistently one of the better teams this season. For me, this is a tricky game for the Bengals, because if you look at the schedule coming up, they've got the fourth most difficult schedule left across the league. This is the kind of game now they have to, I suppose, get over the line, get this win, go 8-4, and then at least then you certainly think you're in with a shot of at least a wild card, if not winning the division. Because as you said, division is competitive. I'm with Colm. I think bearing in mind Mixon, who's been such an efficient running back. Colm said he scored 1 touchdown, in the last 5 games. He scored 2 touchdowns in the last 3 games. As you said, he's running over 100 yards. How do you stop him? Bengals for me as well.
Tip the Bengals is going to kill you boys at the minute. All this jinxing. Mark's going for the Bengals. Oh, so look, we haven't even talked about T. Higgins over 100 yards last week as well.
Yep.
That combination there with Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. Not even mind about the defense and how it's playing at the minute. I feel for the Chargers, because I thought the Chargers would win last week in Denver. They didn't. They didn't come close. Well, they can't. Well, I know, but at one point they were 7 points down, and then they should have. I was stunned they couldn't find it.
They were tied at the start of the game.
Yes, but at one point it was 14-7. Drew Lock was in, and it went. I mean, you were there. It was flat as a pancake. Yeah. So one would think that they may have
had Drew Lock stayed in potentially, but once Teddy came back in, they never really got going. Their passing attack never got going last week. He just couldn't get on the same page as Mike Williams.
This game comes down. Yeah.
Sorry, no, I was going to say it was 14-7, not to look too far back in last week. It was 14-7 at half time in Mile High last weekend, and the Chargers have played so poorly in the first half that a lot of people felt they've got the bad half out of the way now, and they'll come on strong in the second half. It never materialized. Sorry, one more point on the game. You touched on it, T. Higgins. Tyler Boyd as well, another great wide receiver for him this season. And we've spoken about Chase throughout the season, but we touched on it on Monday's show. If you actually look at the statistics of the wide receivers, it's an evenly spread offense this season. He's getting the ball out to a lot of players. It's not just all about the chase. Pardon the pun.
This is a game in which, for the Chargers to win, Herbert needs to be let go and allowed to do whatever he wants tactically, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the long balls, long passes, not just to Mike Williams, but also to Keenan Allen. That won't happen, which is why the Bengals are going to win this game. And it's their own fault. They've got a quarterback with huge potential, but their performances over the last 3 to 4 games have been piss poor, and it's not good enough. So, full house.
Michael, you should start taking photographs of every single selection so far with smiles on us, and then we'll roll them out, and then someone will hit us on Sunday night, tomorrow evening on Red Zone saying, guys, you got it wrong.
So we got full house on the Bucs. We had a full house on the Cowboys the other night. Full house on the Cardinals. Full house on the Bengals. Right. Well, I don't think we'll have a full house in this one, to be fair. We got the Vikings 5-6 against the 0-10-1 Detroit Lions. Colm, when I'm on my funeral bed, no, when I'm on my deathbed, I want those 3.5 hours back from last Thursday. Jesus, like that was, you talk about difficult things to watch. That was atrocious last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Lions have lost 5 games in a row on Thanksgiving, and outside of that Steelers game where they had to play Mason Rudolph, I think Paxton Lynch might have actually been better. The Lions haven't, they've flashed in moments. We saw obviously a good opening quarter against the Rams, but they've been massively disappointing. And I think even though they're at home and even though they're up against again a rival, this game, it's come down to Kirk Cousins, right? When Cousins throws for less than 275 yards, the Vikings are 0-5. So they need Cousins to throw the ball. They should be leaning into the passing game more. Dalvin Cook is obviously out now, but I think they've probably leaned into Cook a little too much. They should be looking for Justin Jefferson, Player of the Month, in the NFC for November, and he's just such a talent. He is he's brilliant, and obviously they have Thielen as well and Conklin, so they have a number of different options. The Vikings are 4-0 when Jefferson has more than 100 yards, and the Lions gave up 300 yards to Andy Dalton. So Kirk should be well able to get over that 275. For the Lions, the best way to get at this Vikings team is on the ground, but Swift is out injured now. Goff did okay against the Bears, but the Vikings are much better against the pass. I'm going to go for the Vikes to get back to 500 by going 6-6.
In fairness to the Lions defense, they have played reasonably well over the past month. They haven't conceded over 16 points in the last 3 games, but yet they still haven't found a way to win a game. And a lot of that is down to the consistency of this offense. Goff played last week, started off well, had that big touchdown, then he quickly went away, and we saw what we're used to seeing. And that Lions offense hasn't scored 20 points or more for 10 straight games. They haven't, they're setting records that haven't been met since 1942. That just shows the shambles that they're dealing with. And you'd have to question whether Dan Campbell is going to be there next year. I know it's his first year as head coach, but we've seen some strange decisions this year in terms of him taking over play calling and some of the stuff he's come out with in the press conference. I'm not sure he's going to be the right man in the long run. But for me, this game, the Vikings have won 8 in a row versus the Lions. They're going to make it 9. There's 10 of their 11 games this season has been 1-score games. I don't think we're going to see the same situation this weekend. I think the Vikings will win just comfortably, despite the Cook injury. As Collins alluded, they've got enough talent there to put up numbers on this team. The Vikings to win. Blowout.
Mark is going with the Lions. I'm not sure why. I'm only joking. He's not. He's going with the Vikings. I would echo the points of a blowout. I think Kirk Cousins. Hold on, just 1 second. Hold on. I'm going to pick him up for fantasy right now. This has to be a sure bet. Yeah, I am second last. I need to win, right? Surely Kirk Cousins, lads, this is his year. This is his week.
I don't know if this is going to be the Kirk Cousins show in terms of putting up huge fantasy points, because it's the kind of game if they're comfortably ahead, he might get pulled in the fourth quarter, or they run the ball. Madison is the backup running back who will come in, and take the lead carries away with Dalvin Cook being injured. I wouldn't be getting too excited on Kirk Cousins in this one. I think we'll see.
I'm going to have to go back. I've nobody to replace him with. No, I haven't. Like my bench is stacked, so I can't.
Are you picking the Vikings though?
This game will be over at the end of the first quarter, Brand. This game is like last week was a disgrace. And I do think Dan Campbell will be there next year, because what's the other option? Stop and start again. He clearly has passion for the job. He has passion for the position. Well, give him time. Maybe something might happen. But the Lions are going nowhere.
There's no progression.
There never is. So what's the point anyway? Like, what's the point?
They're going to have the first round pick. Who do you trust? Do you trust it? Well, the GM will be making the pick. So, all right, you'd like to think anyway.
I tell you what, I wouldn't buy a Ford. All right.
They got 2 first-round picks, actually, I think, because they got to pick him from the Rams on the Goff trade. Yeah, so
You have this draft next year study something. I mean, like, it's almost as if you need the Giants to get somebody in the draft next year, or some sort of. Yeah,
No, no,
I'm going with the Vikings. I think this game is. If the Vikings don't win this, I mean, Jesus, boys, this is embarrassing. Like, if they don't win this, but
Said the
in
same
all
about the
seriousness,
Titans at the Jets. Said the
Oh.
same
I'll
about
tell you
the
what.
Bills against the
Colin,
Jags.
I had no idea until you said it there now, because I have him in my team. Are you serious? Is DeAndre Swift actually out?
He is indeed. He's gone for a month, Michael.
Oh no!
A swift move into your free
no.
agency.
Oh god. Then again, he can't really do anything anyway, because like the team's that bad. Like, he gets maybe a few runs once. He done really well last week, didn't he? He got that.
The week
Was it
prior.
last week he got the?
No, he got
touchdown?
injured in the second quarter last week. Yeah, it's like, and in fairness, like that game last week, it's hard to reflect in a way because Swift is such a good running back. In fairness, if he had been in there for the remainder of the game, who knows? You lose him in the second. I think it was the third or fourth minute of the second quarter. You lose the game by 2 points. He could have been the difference in the end.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
True.
Colts 6-6. Texans 2-9. Now, come with fantasy. I know we had Cynthia on and stuff. NFL fantasy live. I don't want to spend too much of fantasy here. T.Y. Hilton is back this week. Sweet Jesus. 2-9 Houston Texans. Colin, is T.Y. going to go off?
He could, he absolutely could, but I would expect Jonathan Taylor to really go off. I mean, it is telling that Taylor has gone up against some really good defenses over the past couple of weeks. And last week, he had a quiet game by his lofty standards. But it's telling when a quiet game is 83 yards against the Bucs and a touchdown. I mean, he has been sensational this year. He had 145 yards in the first meeting between these two teams. I think he will be the difference maker again. Wentz has been much better than he was last year. You would have to say Frank Reich has done a solid job. 21 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. 4 of those interceptions, 2 last week, and obviously the 2 against the Titans. Only one other pick over the course of the season. Where the Texans might have success is getting to Wentz. He does sometimes hold the ball. They got to Wilson 4 times last week. But the other issue for the Texans is that Trod Taylor was sacked 5 times last week. So the Colts might have some success as well. Look, the Colts were undone by Leonard Fournette having a fantastic game last week. The Texans don't have Leonard Fournette. It is the Colts.
31st ranked run defense against, as Colin has alluded to, probably one of the top 5, if not the top running back, certainly top running back this season with Henry gone out injured. And how do you stop him? Because other teams with greater defense are struggling to do it. I know the Bucs did it last week by and large, but they've touched on it in that game leading up to last week that they are one of the number one, in terms of stopping the run. Is it a blowout? The only way I don't see it as a blowout is if they look too far ahead. And the reason I say that is after this game, the Colts go on their bye week. They could go on their bye week 7
It's a very late bye week.
Yeah, and that could look. We saw last year that worked in the favor of the Bucs. The Bucs got it together because they were struggling going into that bye week. They just lost to the Chiefs. They rallied and they went on that run. After the bye week, home to New England on a Saturday night, away to the Cardinals, and then Las Vegas. 3 difficult games. You look at them individually, all 3 difficult games for the Colts coming up. We knew this was coming anyway. We knew that we discussed them when we were in London in week 5. They had that kind of difficult start. We felt they had a soft schedule that would allow them to get back into the chase. They're in the chase despite last weekend's defeat. They'll win this game, but if they take their eye off the ball and think ahead, we've seen this season with the Titans only 2 weeks ago where they were thinking it was a shoe-in against this Texans team. It didn't materialize, but for me, the Colts all day long.
Mark has picked the Colts. Just to FYI, huh?
It's getting ridiculous.
I know. T.Y. Hilton did play last week and scored a touchdown, but he was out for a considerable amount of time before that. He's 117th ranked wide receiver in the NFL, so he is technically as good as he is. He's almost like an outsider in fantasy at the minute. I'm talking a lot about fantasy tonight because I need to win this week and I need as many tips as you can give me. So please feel free to give me a shout, folks. And this boy over here is sitting acting like a big man talking about Jonathan Taylor because he had him in his team last week, and Jonathan Taylor didn't show up until
Michael's really pushing the
12
boat.
minutes to go in the game.
Michael's really pushing the boat out, Colin, this week, getting Cynthia on the show to one of the lead NFL fantasy analysts. You know, trying to
I
turn
didn't
the
ask her
season
any
around.
fancy questions. I didn't ask her anything. So,
There'll be loads of
He'll be
private
in our
emails.
DMs.
Yeah, loads of private
you have
emails
to
going
text
back and
you in
forth.
the night, Brian. Do I start? Right. Anyway, look, Carson can run it in. Jonathan Taylor can run it in. Frank Reich can put a helmet on, run it on against these lads. I mean, this is a joke, boys. Come on, the Texans aren't winning this game. Like the Colts will win this game. There won't be any NRG at Energy Stadium, and that's the bottom line. It's not going to happen. I don't want to say blow it. Like I said, I blow it a lot here. Like it's just not going to happen, and I just can't see it happening. So
look. We all know the Colts will win. It's how long the Texans can hang around. You know, sometimes you see games where teams just don't start off well. They have interceptions that allows the team to hang around, and you could say that about Thursday night's game. You know, if you watch Thursday night's game, or if you haven't, you see the score on Thursday morning, 27-17, looks comfortable for the Cowboys. For large parts of that game, Saints were in it. You could see a similar scenario here, but inevitably in the end, I think the Colts will have too much. I think we all agree that. It's whether to blow it.
I did really like, because Frank Reich took a bit of criticism in terms of the approach last week and the way they split the, I guess, passing and rushing the ball. And he came out and he gave really great explanation as to why they did that. And in fairness to Frank Reich, he's doing a fantastic job at the Colts. You would have to say he's, I'm very, very impressed by him and his ability.
Really excited for that Patriots Colts game. 2 weeks or 3 weeks on Saturday. That's a late game for us, but it's worth setting up for on Saturday.
Yeah,
it's going to be great.
Great game.
Talking about great big games, the Giants and the Dolphins play each other this weekend. The Giants 4-7, the Dolphins 5-7. I want to give a shout out to our Spanish Giants friend that went over last week. Rico went over to the game last week. He had a good time, Brian, I'm sure.
He did, yeah. It looked like he really enjoyed himself. You know, and he got
jealous.
Absolutely. I mean, he was there to see us beat the Eagles. You know, your rivals. You have your rival teams in your division, Michael. We have ours.
Well,
and
tell me this, Colin. Has Philadelphia left Philadelphia because they didn't show up last week? So,
well,
I mean, they're playing in MetLife this weekend.
It's a bit unfair now. Michael. Disingenuous, but come on.
The Giants did well in terms of they shut down the Eagles last week. The Eagles certainly weren't helped by Jalen Reagor, and we'll get into that later. But the Giants picked Hurts off 3 times last week, and Adoree Jackson is having a decent season. But obviously Mike Glennon is going to start, and I don't know with coaches and with Joe Judge in particular, how much do you take him at face value? He says that there's no timeline for Daniel Jones's return. He could just be playing some games there. It will be interesting to see. But a neck injury keeps him out. So Glennon will get the start to go against this Flores defense, which has really come alive over the last few weeks. They are blitz happy. They've gone back to that. They're averaging 4 sacks per game in the last 4 games. So that is serious. I think that's where it's going to come down to, is how the Giants do in terms of protecting Glennon. We've also seen Tua really come to life over the last couple of weeks. We know all about the struggles of the Dolphins O-line. We spoke about it with Sam Monson. But Jalen Waddle is having a really good rookie season. He has 77 receptions. He's way ahead. He's like 20 receptions ahead of the next rookie. And I think that is probably the other kind of key to this, is how are the Dolphins able to protect Tua? Because it looks like Flores has finally realized, you got to get it out quick, because he's not going to have time to take deep shots. I think that the Dolphins are riding the crest of a wave. I do think this game could go either way, but I'm going to go, given they're at home and given they're the form team, certainly one of them in the league at the moment, after they're really, I think their defense saw what they did against Lamar Jackson, and I think they got a lot of confidence from that. I'm going to say that the Dolphins do enough to win this one at home.
Yeah,
Mike Glennon, Brian. Mike Glennon.
Well, if Mike Glennon plays well in this game tomorrow even, then it puts the pressure even more so on the long-term plan around Daniel Jones, because Daniel Jones has been so inconsistent. And if Mike Glennon, who actually had a very good game when he came in against Dallas in week 5, played really well, protected the ball, got the ball out quickly. If he plays well in this game, does that put more questions and more pressure on Daniel Jones? But it's more a defense for me, because all week long it's been all, and Columns alludes, it's all about this Dolphins defense. But the Giants defense this season has played really well. Did start off right, but it's come together. Xavier McKinney's had 2 interceptions against the Raiders, 2 interceptions last week. But yeah, we're not getting all the credit that we deserve. All we're hearing all week is the Dolphins. I'm going to throw out a few stats for you for this game, right? Columns said it's an even game. Total yards this season, 317 versus 310. Passing, 226 versus 230. Rushing, 90 versus 80. Defensive passing yards, 371 versus 367. 243 versus 262. Points allowed on average, 23 versus 23. Giants are going to win this game. We're going to punch them in the mouth. We're going to win this game. And if we win, we're 5-7. They're 5-8. I don't trust the team. The only team in the NFL this season has lost 7 games in a row. Bear in mind, everyone's raving about them winning 4 in a row. They also lost 7 in a row. So they're there to be got at. Giants are going to win.
Yeah.
Well, you're not putting them out. Where's Sean? Where's Sean in the photograph?
I just thought, I seen your pick and I went, come on. Like,
Michael, we
Mark's
could be
picking
playing
the
the
Dolphins.
Texans and you'd be shocked if I picked the Giants.
You've called out all these numbers, right? Now, hold on.
I'm making the point that all the stats lead to a very even game, but throughout the week, you would think we were playing against the 1972 Miami Dolphins with Bob Greasy, a quarterback. The way
You played
people are
against a
going
team
on
with
about
5 wins and scored 33 points last week. I mean, that's who you're playing against. The Giants scored 13 points last week and had a very good defensive performance, but they were playing a water or diluted down version of Tim Tebow last week. Like, Jalen Hurts let himself down last week. So, look.
No, he didn't let himself down. You saw the real Jalen Hurts last week.
Okay, but the minute that Ian Rapp tweeted that Mike Glennon was starting, I was sitting on my sofa. Jesus, I laughed. And I actually think I tweeted it out, and that was it for me. But I'm going with the Dolphins. I think it'll actually be a close enough game. But I think I've got the Giants going 4-8. The Dolphins going 6-7. Who would have thought that after London? But yeah, Brian. Mike Glennon, man, come on! Like, I mean, jeez, me or you could pad up. Come on!
I think it was actually this week. Would you believe it? This week last year, where Colt McCoy's the quarterback going into Seattle, and this was the famous Mark statement around, Jesus Christ. And like, I would have thought that time, but like, it's not like we're going up against like, one of the heavy favorites for the Super Bowl here. We're going up against the Dolphins team that still have a losing record. Mike Glennon, serviceable, can do a job for you. We need other players to perform. We need
230 yards last week, Brian. Touchdown.
We need Saquon Barkley to perform, but I think defensively we can hold to it.
Saquon Barkley had 53 scrimmage yards last week. I
had
a mate over at the house last night, and he did say to me, he goes, "I don't get all this hype around Saquon Barkley. It's good to see him back, right? I mean, okay, he will do a serviceable job on Sunday."
Michael, the scary thing is, of those 53 yards, one of them was a 41-yard run. So for the remainder of the game,
he had another 12. So
that's the problem. He's overrated. Like, we all know that.
I genuinely didn't know you. I just didn't want to.
No, but he's not proving it. Like, when he consistently getting injured, he's spending large parts of the season out injured. Booker, who, in fairness, I know we're getting into this game for a bit too much now. We move on quickly enough, but when we spoke about free agency and you had Booker in the Broncos and you were kind of him in the hand, he's been really good this year. He should be sharing the lows. When he came in last week, he had 7-8 yards straight away on runs. He deserves more playing time.
Sorry, Carl. We are going to move on from this in a minute, but we done a lot of shows in the off season, and I'll never forget the night that the Giants got Galladay. And I think we all know where this conversation is going. But it's I can't even. I had a whole song planned, but I can't. Is Galladay going to score a touchdown this season, Brian, or what's the cracker?
I think at some stage he will, but I wouldn't blame Galladay. I don't blame Galladay. I blame what we've seen in terms of being called. He was.
I think Galladay's on a holiday, mate. I think he's just.
He might well be on a holiday. He's not getting the ball thrown to him. He two throws in Tampa on the Monday game. He's not the one throwing the ball.
Sunday with Big Glenzie.
He's not the one calling the play. What can you do?
I know.
And he's missed 5 games. And he's missed 5 games, which was always a risk when he took the sign on because he's obviously injury prone.
Fly, Eagles, fly. Jets, Eagles, 5-7, 3-8. Eagles going back to MetLife. I don't think they showed up last week, Colin. As I said, will they show up this week? They probably will show up this week because the way that Jalen Hurts played last week was atrocious. I mean, there's no other way of putting it, is it?
Well, I think look, Jalen Hurts divides opinions on this show. I don't think it's fair to put it all on him. Last week, I think the Jalen, if you want to look for like Jalen Hurts did not have a good game. He had a really poor game last week. You throw 3 picks, that you had a really poor game, but he wasn't helped by the drops. I mean, Jalen Reagor's hand-eye coordination, was he on the beer before the game? One pops off his face mask and the other goes literally straight through his hands. It was like, if you want to talk about an embarrassing performance, that was an embarrassing performance. That's why people were tweeting the videos of Devonta Smith beside a trash can and saying Devonta Smith and Jalen Reagor at training this week. So yeah, Hurts was miserable against the Giants. Reagor was even worse. And we saw other Eagles drop the ball as well. They should have stuck to running the ball. They actually got more out of rushing the ball last week than they did again on throwing it, but they went away from it. They are fortunate that they are playing the Jets this week. The Jets are one of 2 teams. Here, I have a betting stat. The Jets are one of 2 teams not to be favored in a single game this year, and Brian can explain to me afterwards what that means. But look, the reality is that for this Jets team, the pass rush is the only thing that is really working. Especially the interior of their D-line is fantastic. 5 sacks last week. They cause all sorts of trouble, and Hurts is going to have to deal with that. So that will be interesting. They don't tend to allow a QB to run, and he's got an injured ankle. So I am interested to see how they do that. One of the other mad stats around this is that the Eagles have the most rushing yards in the NFL this season, but they don't have a single player who's had a 100-yard game, which is a kind of a mad one. For the Jets, I suppose the concern for them is they did win last week against the Texans, but Wilson came in and didn't play well at all, and kind of they won almost in spite of him. He took 4 sacks again last week. That's 4 times that he's taken 4 or more sacks in 7 games that he started and finished, which is more than 50%. And neither Flacco or White took more than 2 sacks in a game. So big concerns, I would say, a little bit around Zach Wilson. So I know you two will enjoy the Jalen Hurts slander. So I will hand it over to you. I'm going to go Eagles to win this and go to 6-7.
Well, right now we don't know if Jalen Hurts is going to play. He's been carrying an injury. It was great to see the Philadelphia Rangers just be coming out and suggesting that it was the injury that caused him to have that poor performance last week. Nothing to do with what he went up against. But right now, we don't know if he's going to play. And if he doesn't play, it's Michael's favorite friend, Gardner Minshew, with the mud flaps potentially stepping in. Yeah, I agree, Colin. The Jets situation. The Jets would have watched that game last week and seen how if it is Hurts, how he was held in check. And they did that earlier in the season against Tannehill. But the problem for the Jets is if they go back to what they should have done last week to a large part of the game, which the Eagles got away from, was the running game. And the Jets have given up 20 rushing touchdowns this year. They're one of the weakest in the league. And if we see the Eagles run like they did when they went into Mile High and other games this season, like the Saints, for example, that would still no matter who's at quarterback, give them more than enough to win this game. They're 11-0 in the series against the Jets. The Jets have never beaten the Eagles in all the years. So I don't see it changing. So I'm going with the Eagles, unfortunately. However, it would be nice to see the Jets win.
Mark, I actually only have that like that because Brian texted me mid-pick. I'm changing my pick to the Jets. But he's not. So he's just now confusing me. Mark is going with the Eagles. All I'm going to say in terms of this game is Zach Wilson, 115 yards, 4 interceptions, bench in the third quarter. The Eagles are going to win this game. And I predict Jalen Hurts will score 4 passing touchdowns and make right of what he done wrong last week. He's a franchise quarterback for this team. I was devastated with his performance last week for numerous reasons after the Raiders game on Thursday for Brian, but
I would genuinely, I'm not trying to be funny because I don't like the Eagles. I generally say this is one of the games that actually could be the shock of the weekend. Wait and see now, it'll be a blowout by halftime. But you're looking
stop covering. We need to stop covering ourselves here. It's not going to be a shock.
I'm not covering. I'm just saying. We picked so many games where we got. In fact, if it wasn't for me and my love for the Giants, we'd be full house across every game. So I'm just saying this is the kind of game I could see the Jets potentially finding a way to win.
And thanks for ruining the full house every game.
It's covering because that's the reality of this league. I mean, the league is set up for parity. That's what the league endeavors to do. I mean, the league has a competition committee who look at ways if the league is if they feel it's unfair or a team is being dominant, they look at ways to change that. So you have to cover because that's what the league's set up for.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, here we go again.
Woof. The Jags 2-9 against the Rams. This game is at SoFi Stadium. So I'm really interested to see the traveling Jags fans at this game. Colin, who have you got?
Where do you start with the mess in Jacksonville? Urban Meyer said this week that his receivers are still having issues running the wrong routes, depth issues, and location issues. We're week 13. How are your receivers still having those issues? That is a damning indictment of Urban Meyer. And I'd say he was maybe a little bit disappointed to see Brian Kelly take that LSU job and the Notre Dame job is gone already.
It's been a mad week. See his accent last night.
Brian Kelly changed his
Louisiana.
accent in 24 hours. I mean, that was even crazier than Steve McLaren, but there you go. But for the Jags, I mean, Trevor Lawrence, it's been a very disappointing. He looked like in London, like he might be set to take off. 9 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Their best offensive weapon has been Robinson. They need to lean into him more. He hasn't had a single game where he's had 20 carries. In terms of the Rams, I mean, this should be a get right game. But this is I suppose, a test to see for them. There was a really interesting piece in The Ringer this week by Stephen Ruiz, kind of highlighting that the Rams' offensive struggles can't all be laid at Matthew Stafford's feet. Yes, there have certainly been problems, but the fact that McVay's offense over the course of a season becomes very kind of one-dimensional, and teams figure it out. Teams know what plays that they're going to run on second and third down, and they're able to therefore take advantage of it. This should be the Rams, and this should be where their superstar team comes out to play. So I'm going to go with the Rams, but they need to step up. They need to put in a performance. Losing 3 on the bounce, they're your Super Bowl pick, Michael. But right now, they certainly would not inspire confidence.
Last year, when it was, I can't recall which week it was the day in which we did the show in the World Shed, and we had the big joke about the Rams playing at home to the Jets, and should we move on and not discuss this game because it was going to be a blowout, and the Jets went in and won, and we all agreed then it was the complacency. But the problem there is, well, it won't be a problem there for the Rams because they can't be complacent. They've just lost 3 in a row. They've given up 28 plus points on defense. They need a rebound. Kupp, who at the start of the season, he had 10 touchdowns after 5 or 6 weeks of the season. He was a standout wide receiver. He hasn't caught a touchdown in the last 3 games. They're struggling. Odell Beckham doesn't look like he's going to play. His injuries are coming back again to haunt him. So he's out of the game. Don't think it'll make much difference really, but because of this game which they've got, which is against the Jags defense, which has come on a little bit since the bye week. They played reasonably well to keep them in games, but the problems still lie around the fact that the head coach is just not good enough to be there. And I don't know if you saw enough of his press conference during the week where he got questioned about some red zone play calling because they struggled, and they said, "Why didn't you not step in and make decisions there and take ownership of the situation?" He said, "No. I give full trust to my offense coordinator in that situation," which is bonkers. It shows we're not in college now. Sometimes you need to step in and get involved because you are the head coach. The Rams will win. I don't think it'll be pretty. I don't think it's going to be a game that we'll see red zone bouncing back and forth from by the time it hits halftime or third quarter. Unless we see a situation where they knocked them off early with the way the Lions did, where they went in with trick plays and caught the Rams off early. Can't say it. Too methodical for me with Lawrence there as quarterback. Rams will win comfortably.
Just on all that talk there about Urban. Urban was great crack in London, Colin. He was very hospitable with us, we have to say. Now he was good fun and enjoyed his time in London town. Enjoyed his time at a college game 2 weeks before that as well. And he's had a nice season. Mark is going with the Rams. This is a game. It's almost like a restart game for the Rams. You're talking about Cooper Kupp having a difficult stretch. This Rams team almost peaked and then went down. If they're going to get back, it's now. This is the chance to go 8-4, chance to right some wrongs, and it's just one of those things. So, Brian, if you have to go get a beverage, feel free to jump off there. Go on mute. All good. Yeah, I was hoping he was going to stay full screen, but I was going to have it for the crack. I'm taking the Rams to win this game. I don't see how the Jags can get into it whatsoever. But for me, it's not about the score. Of course, it is in terms of the win or the loss. But Von Miller, Odell Beckham. You want to see that team gelling, Colin, and you want to see the Rams come in and just get some sort of flux on both sides of the ball, but they will comfortably, and there's more chance of the Snake Cup thing in London being more successful or more long than the chances of the Jags staying for long in this game. So I missed those cups in London. Remember that?
What was said about the Jags and the Bills game, Michael?
What
was that Josh Allen was going to throw for how many touchdowns, and it was going to be over.
I picked the Jags.
Yeah, but to mess with us.
No. I had thought the Jags after London would actually have a chance of winning. So, well, granted, I haven't had many picks since that, but yes.
The first game after London, they went to Seattle and they got the doors blown off them, which is probably one of the rare Seattle performances we've seen this season. The problem with the Rams is as well, the Cardinals are so good this year, and the 49ers seem to be finding their feet now and making a good push towards the playoffs.
Long way to go.
It is a long way to go, but where are they at the moment? They're in a wild card. Like, a lot of people felt this team would be the number 1 seed, and 2 years in a row when London buses and gone to Super Bowl. It could still happen. We saw it last year with the Bucs. They were a wild card. They made it to the Super Bowl. But right now, there's a lot to be addressed. And I think a lot of the blame has to fall with the coach.
It's like half time or the after the first night of the Rose of Tralee, and there's still another 14 or 16 roses to see die. There's a long way to go here, and we don't know if a poem or if a song is going to win it, but maybe a little poem from Von Miller might win it on Sunday for the Rams. We're all picking the Rams. The next game is Washington, 5-6, are going up against the Raiders in Vegas. Big win for Washington in Monday Night Football. Thanks, Washington, for that Monday night. Really appreciated that. Woke up and laughed.
I think it's time we all start picking different teams because we've only had one situation, one game.
Well, here, I tell you what, we are in trouble this week if these don't come up because we're all screwed. 5-6, 6-5. Colin, the game is in Vegas, 9:05 on Sunday night. Who have you got and why?
Maybe this will be a game that divides opinion. We'll see. Mark isn't here to sound the reunion klaxon as he loves to do, but I think this is a big one because you have Derek Carr and Jack Del Rio And obviously, Jack was head coach with the Raiders and was quite successful. Actually, probably their most successful coach since Tom Flores back in the 80s. And I'd say feels a little bit disgruntled that he was tossed aside for John Gruden. So he might have a point to prove. And there's also the fact that Derek Carr had outside of this year had his best year under Jack Del Rio. But then they kind of fell out a couple of years ago because Jack tweeted to say that Derek couldn't play in cold weather. Fortunately, that's not going to be an issue this time around. Raiders played very well on Thanksgiving overall, but I think the issue for the Raiders is they were 3 of 13 on third down against the Cowboys. So that's definitely a concern. And the interesting thing for Washington, and we talked about this with Cynthia, is they've been able to get to the QB despite losing their main 2 rushers. So they do struggle in the secondary, and the Raiders could potentially take advantage of that. The Washington line is playing really well, and that has helped since the bye. They've come back. They played very, very well. The Raiders may be able to. That'll be an interesting battle there because the Raiders are so good at getting pressure on the QB. But Washington are playing really well. Riverboat Ron has he said he would address every issue with the team over the course of the bye. I'm going to go with the Washington football team to finish here.
Where do I go from there?
Well, Brian, your Raiders going up against the Washington football team.
Michael,
Brian's not a Raiders fan.
I know how much you enjoy when I chirp about the Raiders. It's more so just to wind you boys up. But Derek Carr,
that's what it is.
Derek Carr's had a few. Look, if you're asking me tomorrow who I want the Giants to trade for in the league, it'd be Derek Carr. I just think he's from the top. I think he's so underrated in my opinion. I know he's had a few off games recently. He's had a few off games recently, but they're still the 3rd best passing offense in the league, despite the frailties that they've shown of late in games. And he's across the season, averaging 310 yards per game. He's a standout quarterback for me. Doesn't get the credit he deserves. There's been a lot of difficult times in Vegas. I was going to say Oakland there this season, but yeah, every time you think they're gone, they rebound. Like no one felt they were going to beat the Cowboys last week. We touched on the fact that in previous seasons they've hit that side of the season, time of the season where they tend to fall away and they miss out on the playoffs. That was a big win for them last week against a Washington team that, as Colin said, once they get to the quarterback, if you get beyond that and your offensive line can hold up, they struggle in the secondary. And that's where I see the game ultimately coming down to. I think the Raiders, who are putting up good numbers in games, even ones that they've lost, will find their way to put up points here. And I'm not sure, as good as he's playing, I'm not sure Heineken can live with them. I know the Raiders defense struggled as well. I see a high-scoring game. It's a tough one. You look at the handicap in the game. 1.5 points. It reflects what the bookies think they're undecided. But for me, I think the home team will just find a way to win. Keep their season on track, 7-5. If they win, Raiders for me.
Marcus going with the Raiders. Don't think Marcus Mariota will play this weekend, but we'll see what happens. I agree with what you're saying, Colin. The one thing I will say is they played a very, very poor Seattle team on Monday night, winning 17-15. Brian's Raiders look like world beaters in Thanksgiving, and I can't look past that. Derek Carr, 373 yards in Dallas last week. Never mind the fact that the Raiders know that the Broncos and the Chiefs are going up against each other. The Chargers could lose to the Bengals. The Raiders could go into 7-5. Like people are like, somebody, was it you, Colin or Brian, mentioned the Cynthia about the NFC West being the best. I think the AFC West is the best division of football at the minute. Like I think there's not many. Like what can happen? Darren Waller, but not even just Darren Waller. Hunter Renfrow today, boys, or on Sunday, and I can't see how Washington can keep in it. I think the Raiders will pull away 28-14, and I'm taking the Raiders. It kills me to say it. It is what it is, but the Raiders will win this game 100%. Sorry, lock of the week. The Raiders beating the Washington.
Get your money on.
Bringing it back. Lock of the week.
Waller's missed training a couple of times this week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, Well, that's my bad. I haven't been.
No, but he's still
haven't,
expected to play, but it'd be interesting to see how he is.
actually, look, it'd be grand.
It'll be
Don't
grand.
worry
Yeah.
about
Yeah. Get
it.
out there and play.
100%. Don't be worried about that. It'd be grand. Right. Um, it might not be grand for the Steelers. 5-5-1. Shout out to the Roonies. It has been an easy season for the Steelers. Has a lot. I mean, Ben has not looked great. Losing 41-10 last week against Cincinnati. I was shocked, and I know the Steelers have been struggling. Ben's been struggling, but to score 41 points, and we talked about it on Monday night, Colin, that was still a shocking scoreline. Lamar Jackson, 4 touchdowns. 4 interceptions last week. I'll say 4 touchdowns. You'd be happy enough. This is a game where there are issues on both sides of the ball. Who's going to win and why?
It is. Both of these teams have a lot of issues and not helped by injuries. You'd have to say either of them. Lamar's only played the Steelers twice. He started twice, and he hasn't played well in either of them. 5 interceptions, 3 touchdowns. Obviously, the 4 interceptions against the Browns, though quite telling that he threw 4 interceptions and the Browns still couldn't get the win. And that's kind of been the story of the Ravens season, is they found a way to win, even when they haven't played well. They didn't play well against the Bears when Lamar was out with illness, and they still won it. And it's the Ravens side who they are known ordinarily for running the ball really well, but they haven't had a running back eclipse 80 yards this year. Obviously, they lost their top 3 running backs in before the season even began. They had to bring guys in. But interesting that you associate them so strongly with running the ball and yet not to go over 80. For the Steelers, Big Ben is an issue, but the O-line, I mean, it's a disaster. It can't protect Big Ben. It can't open holes for Harris to run. And where the Ravens are particularly weak is in the secondary. But I don't think Big Ben will have the time. I think the Ravens will look to blitz, and I don't think Big Ben will have the time to really take advantage of that. I think this will be an absolute slugfest. These are like two like elderly heavyweights who are going to lean on each other for the entire bout, but the Ravens are just going to have enough to win this one.
Yeah, we've seen some games this season where the Ravens defense has blitzed heavy. Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator, going in all in on offense, in particular the game against the Chargers, and it paid dividends and they won the game. And you're going up against a quarterback, let's be fair, is struggling at this stage of his career. The offensive line, Colum's called it out. He's calling out the same kind of points I was going to make, that, whilst the Ravens offense has been stop-start this season, we've seen games like when they played the Chiefs and they were down by 15 points, they came back and put up huge points. I think they put up huge numbers the following week. Then it's kind of fallen off a bit. They've not scored more than 16 points 3 games in a row. I'd love to have the Ravens problems, because when the Chiefs weren't putting up points, everybody was saying, oh my God, Mahomes is struggling. This Chiefs offense is struggling. The Ravens are 8-3, they're number 1 seed. They're struggling on offense. I mean, and they're going to win this game. It won't be pretty. They never are in this division. I think the line is 4.5 points. I could see it. I could give an argument as to why the Steelers will keep it close, because they always do, because of the rivalry. But I think the Ravens will find a way to win. They go 9-3, and you look what they've got coming up. You certainly think there's a good valid reason there that they could push on and be the number 1 seed. And I think the defense will show up and win this game, albeit it's in Pittsburgh. Too many concerns for me with that Steelers team.
The biggest concern is Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
He did have 3 games in a row with 250 pass yards or over pass yards. It doesn't matter. He's past it, boys. He shouldn't be on that field anymore. And we're getting to the point now where we're asking questions like, why was he brought back? He was obviously brought back because of his status, because of who he was. But last year in January, February time, this year there were questions. Why is he coming back? Why financially is he taking that contract? He should have retired. He should have walked away.
Michael, he took a pay cut, and when you see quarterbacks at his...
He should have walked. He should have walked.
Yeah, no, I agree. When you see quarterbacks at his stature, in terms of he's won Super Bowls, he's won 2 Super Bowls, taking pay cuts, and a significant pay cut. I know there's all this, he's helping the team out, he's helping the cap, and it looks good, and all the fans, they fall into that. But If he's accepting it, most quarterbacks who are really instrumental in the team's performances and making the playoffs don't take pay cuts. And the fact that he did, I think he knew himself. I'm going back to have one more go at it. I'll help the team out.
One more go.
They need to move on.
Do you know what that is? Like that is cap. That's bull. Do you know what I mean? That's the millennial term, Brian, for lies. Cap.
I said it in the Aviva on week 1. It was the exact same scenario that the Giants were left with Eli Manning. They want to do the right thing. They want to shepherd him out the door in a nice manner that causes no disturbance to him or the team or the fans. But how do you do it and when do you do it? I think inevitably we all know it's probably in about 2 to 3 months' time. It's coming down the line. The problem for the Steelers is the cap situation that they're under now. They don't have an abundance of picks. They're in a situation where they've had a reasonably good season, so they'll probably pick middle round, middle draft, whatever quarterback they are looking for, if there is any, will be long gone. So you're into a situation where you're trying to get in with the big boys and free agency with the Rodgers and the Wilsons and players like that, and see can they find a way to pry them out, to get them away from the team that they're with.
Well, I think Rodgers will go to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, if he becomes a free agent, then that changes the dynamic of that.
I think he looks at any team outside of Green Bay and he sees the Steelers with Najee Harris and all the offensive weapons and the defensive weapons, and he goes there. I don't think he'd go to Denver personally, but we'll talk about that after February. There's no point in talking about it now because we're starting a whole of a conversation here.
Just on Big Ben, the reason he's back is cap, literally, because the dead cap on Big Ben was 36 million. So they had no choice but to bring him back. I mean, that's ultimately, a guy who, was so good for so long, but they give him such a long deal. So they have to bring him back this year. Next year, I think it's a 10 million dead cap, which is much more manageable. It's less than ideal, but in comparison to the 36, they had to bring Big Ben back this year. And everyone kind of had an idea that this is what we were facing. But it's not like who they've Mason Rudolph, who's even worse. And I mean, look, the Broncos have a litany of bad quarterbacks, but Mason Rudolph is worse than anyone the Broncos have put in a QB.
I also think there's a situation similar to the Drew Brees one, where if he stays on, the Drew Brees retirement wasn't announced until very late on. A lot of players retire immediately. I think there's a cap situation there where it can be discounted even further if he's to remain on the books till March or whatever. Then he retires. So we'll probably get it down to 7 or 8 million, which, as Colin was touched on, 36 million compared to 8 changes the whole situation.
Let's see what happens. He's obviously done a lot for the franchise, and he probably does deserve that time. And I mean, he'll probably retire in 2025. I think the Steelers need Big D if he fits in to scream at them because they're not good enough at the minute. And I think Lamar Jackson will come into this game and destroy them. I really do. I think the Ravens are going to go 9-3. I think the Ravens will go 1 and done in the playoffs. But I'm starting to think number 1 seed. I'm starting to think it. But yeah, Ravens. Mark Andrews, two passing touchdowns. Devonta Freeman gets a couple as well. Big win for the Ravens. 40-odd points against Ben Roethlisberger with 2 interceptions. Hold on.
40-odd points.
Hold on. If Mariucci says it, if all the boys on Rich Eisen going, I mean, they're all going, it's a great crack. I'm telling you now, Ben is going to be found out.
I think he's been found out now.
He's going to be found out even more so. And Tony Romo's going to go, I don't know, Jim. Maybe they should just take him off, Jim. Like that sort of thing. Is that
the game? Is that the game in which Romo and Jim Nantz are doing? Yeah,
I'm not sure, but I would presume
CBS game. Yeah, I'd imagine they'll be on that.
It's a big game. It's a big game. CBS. It's the only show in town for the boys.
It's definitely a mute
Jim
game.
Nantz.
It's definitely a mute game. He's involved.
Hello, friends. Don't start that. That needs to be our journey to get Jim Nantz in the show. The day Jim Nantz is on this show, boys, I have
no issue with Jim.
Incredible. Wise up. Tony Romo's good, right? Almost there. 49ers, Seahawks. 49ers 6-5. Seattle 3-8. Russell Wilson. Talking about Aaron Rodgers there now. I'm sure this is Russell Wilson's last year. Maybe he'll do a wee huff and go back to Sicily again. Colin.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is Russell who made it very clear that he wanted out. And released a list of teams that he allegedly would consider. These were the only teams he would consider, and then pretended, no, I never did any of that. No, all good. Well, things are clearly not all good in Seattle. They have scored a grand total of 26 points over the last 3 games that they've lost. There's no running game there. There's just all sorts of issues. Clearly, you had Pete Carroll walking out of a press conference, and granted, he did come back, but that was quite telling, I think. They're all going up against a 49ers team who have found form, rebounded from where they were. You're seeing Nick Bosa. I mean, look, the O-line is still an issue in Seattle. Nick Bosa has 11 sacks in 11 games. I think he will be looking forward to this game. And Mike Wall was not a fan of Russell Wilson at all in any way, shape, or form. He felt he holds the ball too long and he takes sacks. Well, even if you don't hold the ball long, Nick Bosa has ways of getting to the QB. The other thing is, this is a 49ers team who eat up the clock. They hold the ball. They're great in terms of running it. Debo is out, so a lot will fall on Elijah Mitchell. But I think that they will have enough. Given it's a divisional game, I'm sure the Seahawks, and it's at home, the 12th man will, probably show up. I just don't think it'll be enough. I think that the Niners are going to win this and go to 7-5.
Seattle has beaten the Niners 13 of the last 15 games. It's bizarre because in a division where there's so much back and forth in terms of who wins games, they obviously need to find a way to beat them. But that was when the Hawks were good, and that's when Russell Wilson was playing well. I think Russell Wilson is still carrying that injury, and we saw examples of that on Monday night where he was missing players that normally he would make those throws and get it in there, and they struggled against the Washington defense that's been playing reasonably well. But again, the struggle of Hasty, who's an underrated running back, is coming back for the 49ers, and it's a good time to get him back because Deebo Samuel has become essentially a running back and a wide receiver for them. But Jimmy G is playing reasonably well, 90+ pass rate in 5 games in a row. For all the stick he's got, he's the right man for them at the moment. For me, 49ers win. They roll on 7-5, certainly in the running for a wild card.
That was quicker than the mass on Easter Saturday. Mark is picking the 49ers. I'm picking the 49ers. 49ers are going to go 7-5. The Seahawks aren't good enough. And the Seahawks let me down on Monday night. Look at this.
We've never had a show like this. We had one about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I went horribly wrong. Well, I don't think it was quite as much consensus.
There's only 2 games. So far. And one of them you're going to say,
you had the rule with Giants, for God's sake. If you just done that, if you just picked the Dolphins, we'd be all laughing.
We're playing against a 5-7 team. Well, I keep repeating myself. We're not playing against the. Oh, here we go.
Here we go, indeed. Matchbook, our proud partners, delighted to be with Matchbook before we look at Sunday Night Football. £15, 15 yo-yo welcome offer. Money back as cash if your first bet loses. Enter bonus code Irish NFL Show for that bonus. All the T's and C's at the bottom. Please gamble aware. Please think what you're doing before you deposit, and try and have, obviously, a safe bit of crack on the NFL. Brian, we won the bet last week. I need €109 to go to 2 NFL games. Are you going to transfer it over?
€109 to get to 2 games. I'd love to know who you're traveling with those costs. That sounds very reasonable.
Easy jet from Belfast.
That plane will fall into the old. No, we're not going there.
Anyway.
The bet won last week.
Jesus, Brian.
The bet won last week.
I'm not editing this.
And bear in mind that we've picked a lot of games. We could essentially be doing an 8 or 9 team accumulator here. But I've whittled it down to 4, and I think we're going to agree on these. So we just touched on the 49ers. So they're in. The Vikings are in. The Bucs are in against the Falcons, and the Cards are in against the Bears. I think it pays in the region of 3-1, 7-2. That's our 4 teams for this week. Cardinals to beat the Bears, the Bucs to beat the Falcons, the Vikings to beat the Lions, and the 49ers to take care of Seattle. They're the 4 teams in the Irish NFL shows. accumulator of the week. Thanks to Matchbook, as always, for supporting the show. And please bet responsibly. €15 offer on the table for Matchbook.
£15 as well. Welcome offer. Yeah.
Of course, pounds and euros. If you wish to place a bet this weekend on the NFL, please do bet responsibly.
Code Irish NFL Show. Let's go through a lock of the week each. I have two. My first one is the Raiders against Washington. That game is in the late window on Sunday night in Vegas. I think the Raiders will push on from their win against Dallas. And I think the Dolphins will destroy the New York Giants on Sunday as well. Colin, who have you got?
That's interesting in terms of your second.
I'm only joking. I think the Dolphins will win.
But for me, I think it's going to be the Colts, which is interesting, saying at a 6-6 team or the lock of the week. But Jonathan Taylor, to me, has been the outstanding player in the NFL this year. I think he's the front runner for MVP. And I think he will have another fantastic game for the Colts. And for me, yeah, I think they seem to really want to play for right. There are undoubtedly issues on that team. And I think in the playoffs, they won't be able to get over the hump, but they will win against the Texans.
Colin, that line on that game, I know you'd love to know the line on the betting perspective, is 9.5 points. So essentially, you have the Colts have to win by 10 or more, which you would expect. I can't give you my lock of the week, Michael, because it's coming up now in Sunday Night Football.
Okay, well, we all wonder what that is. Looking forward to that. Tell you what, let's talk about something else very quickly. Matchbook having a great market on the Super Bowl, over 1.3 million matched on it at the minute. The Bucs are 5.8, the Chiefs are 6, the Packers 7. But the one that I find really interesting, boys, the Rams are basically 12-1, boys, to win the Super Bowl. The Titans 20-1, and the team is number one in the AFC. The Ravens are 10-1. What do you think? Any predictions about giving stuff away? Or?
I'm not getting it. It's funny today of all days. So me and Colin caught up today and went through what our picks were from the start of the season. I went back to the original show where we did it in the nice house in the North County Dublin, and just a recap on who was picking. I am not going to get away from my pick. I'm still going with the Packers to play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
I'm taking the Rams, Colin.
I think that I still think it'll be the Chiefs against the Bucs, but because when it comes to playoff football, how do you bet against Brady? But look, the Packers have been, I think, the standout team in the NFC, even more than the Cards. But I think it's going to be a very, very interesting playoff, race to the playoffs and when the playoffs kick off.
What price are the Packers, Michael? What price are the Packers?
The Packers are 7.2 best price. They're actually as much as 8.4 to back there as well. Back and lay, you can get all the information on matchbook.com.
That's good value.
£15, 15 yo-yo. Welcome offer. Money back is cash. If your first bet loses, you can bet in NI and ROI as well. Thank you very, very much to Matchbook for the continued sponsorship and also for a few euros to throw in a lovely kitty every week as well. Appreciate it, lads, and we will talk more about Matchbook soon. We're going to look ahead now to Sunday Night Football. Nice game on Sunday Night Football this week. It's just the Broncos and the Chiefs. Now, Brian, we're led to believe here your laptop is 12%. So if you fall off, you fall off. It is what it is. We have to talk about the Giants and the Dolphins. So.
My laptop now is like your body's at say 4:10 on Sunday night going into Monday morning when you are living her up watching the Broncos. I might as well go first, Colin, if you don't mind. Since though,
the picks, the graphics on the screen are.
Oh, apologies. Okay, sorry. Off you go, Colin.
This is for first place in the West, Colin. So who have you got?
Yeah, when it got flexed, I think there were a lot of people who said, "What is the idea behind that?" But I thought the Broncos had beat the Chargers last week, and so it proved. And you now have a battle for first place. But the Broncos are going to Arrowhead. The Chiefs have beaten the Broncos 11 straight times. And a lot of times it hasn't been close. The 3 of the past 4 have been by at least 20 points. So the Broncos are absolutely up against it. Patrick Mahomes has 48 touchdown passes in 19 primetime games. 48 touchdowns in 19 primetime games. And this was the stat, I put it on Twitter on Friday night, but this was the stat that stood out to me. Travis Kelce, when playing in Arrowhead against the Broncos, averages 130 yards a game. It is an insane stat. And to do that over the last 5 years is just, it's an outrageous stat. It is one of the stats I think that I've ever come across. And I think that is going to be the Broncos traditionally, for as long as I'm watching them, 30 years, is they have struggled against tight ends, but I don't know if they've ever struggled against anyone as much as Kelce. The Chiefs are coming off a bye. Mahomes has been better, but not back to his old self, you would say. But when you look at the third downs on this, the Chiefs are the best in the league, and the Broncos defense struggles to get teams off. Melvin Gordon is doubtful, and the Chiefs have 2+ turnovers in their last 3 games. I'm going to go Broncos. It makes no sense. I agree. But this season hasn't made any sense. And I think eventually a tide has to turn. I think Vic Fangio plays a system that Mahomes has struggled against this year in particular. And Mahomes has come out and said that he hates, like he likes to take the shots down the field. Fangio tends to play 2 high safeties, cover 2, cover 4, cover 6. So I think that's what they'll do. It is all going to be on Kelce, because what the Chiefs have been able to do against the Broncos time and time again, get it to Kelce and he gets yards. I'm going to say that the Broncos are going to have enough, because I think it's a very different Broncos defense this year in terms of the cornerbacks. And I think Justin Simmons has really found his form over the last month or so. So I'm going to say Patrick Surtain, Justin Simmons, Kareem Jackson, and Ronald Darby are going to have enough, and the Broncos are going to somehow eke out a win. And I will probably end up with egg on my face on Monday night's show. But you got to believe in your team sometime, even when it makes no sense. And this is one of those occasions.
So I'm picking the Chiefs, but I'm not picking the Chiefs more so because of Patrick Mahomes. The offense this season has been stuttering. As Colin said, it's gotten a little bit better lately, but still hasn't got to the levels in which we have seen over the years, of which we've come to expect leading into this season. The Chiefs defense, having had their struggles at the start of the season, has rebounded very well. Spag seems to have them gone in the right direction. Be interested to see how they come off the bye week. Sometimes the bye week actually does you a disservice because you have the momentum going game to game, and then you take a break and it doesn't kind of materialize and come back to what you saw. They've gone 4 games in a row. They haven't given up more than 20 points. And I find it difficult if those pass rushers, and Jones in particular, has a day and goes up against the Broncos offense and they struggle and he does get to Teddy Bridgewater. I can see it been a long night for the Broncos offensively, and then that allows Mahomes to have a reasonably good performance without setting the world alight. So for me, I think it'll be a low-scoring game.
Brian, is the laptop battery gone?
I think it might be.
Let's just this is class. Let's just keep him like that. He looks like he's enjoying himself.
I'm glad. I'm at least, look, in fairness, at least he got his pick in.
He did indeed. There he is. Well, this is good because I can say this now. Last year, you may remember the Broncos played the Chiefs in Arrowhead on Sunday Night Football. Yeah, remember that, Colin?
Mm-hmm.
Drew Lock came into the fourth quarter. It was 4 or 5 minutes to go, and all he had to do was take that down the field, and the Broncos probably would have had a very good chance, at least, of beating the Chiefs. They have lost the last 11 games in Arrowhead, but there's a number of different factors here. The Broncos looked fantastic against the Chargers last season, and the Chiefs, as an overall team this season, haven't shown up. They haven't. He's gone. My God. Like, what a way to leave during this right now. There's a lot of variables here. There are 2 ways of looking at this. The first one is Patrick Mahomes is in a slump. The second one is Patrick Mahomes hasn't been good enough this season. I am actually leaning towards the second one. He's now trying to get 250 plus yards for 3 games in a row. that should be wee buns, as we say up here, for Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is going to... Oh, hold on. Hi, Brian. I'm just going to keep talking. Patrick Mahomes really needs to show up in this game. And as you said with Travis Kelce, it's not just about passing it off to Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Darrell Williams. He needs to get Tyreek Hill. He needs to get Travis Kelce and other guys on the way as well, as Brian tries to work that out. I'll bring him in if he does come on. But for me, I don't think he will. Melvin Gordon is potentially, it seems as if now, he is out of the game. And Brian's back. Did you do that on purpose to just try and just wing my whole pick? I've really been bigging up this pick. I was saying, Brian, there now, last season, Drew Lock was at the 40-yard line, I think. The Broncos 40-yard line, 4.5 minutes to go in Arrowhead, and all he had to do was take it down the field and win the game, Sunday Night Football. So there are occasions, Drew Lock was the quarterback last year, and the Broncos were close enough to beating the Chiefs. Javonte Williams is going to be the lead back on Sunday. In Patrick Mahomes' 65 starts, the Chiefs are 3-12 when the opponent runs at least 49% of its snaps. A combination of giving the ball to Javonte Williams, not relying too much on Bridgewater's passes, with Justin Simmons, Pat Surtain playing well, means the Broncos are going to win this game. And if the Broncos do win this game, I have egg on my face for a start because I picked the Chargers last week. The Broncos proved last week their season isn't over, but their season is over if they don't win this game. It isn't over. They still have a chance at the playoffs, but to get through as a wild card, never mind winning the West, to show that you're serious, you go to Arrowhead, you beat the Chiefs, because many teams that went there this season, they should have won. The Giants were fantastic against the Chiefs. They should have won. Patrick Mahomes hasn't been good enough this season. I'm saying that now. He'll probably throw over 5 touchdowns, 500 yards on Sunday. It hasn't been good enough. I can't wait for this game. They've got a great Sunday Night Football, a great Monday Night Football, but the reality is 11 games is too much, and the Broncos are going to win this game 28-27 in Arrowhead. So I can't wait. And I'm going with the Broncos.
Look, I was just going to say before, unfortunately, I self-destructed, was that we have seen, no matter time and time again in every division, that sometimes divisional games just have ways of, as Colin said, showing results on their head that no one expects. But it's not, as I said, but look, it's the making of a great game. This division, this weekend, by Monday morning again, it'll be turned on its head because the Raiders play and the Chargers have a difficult game, and obviously they're playing each other. It'll be interesting to see who's where come Monday morning. Great weekend again, that.
It's the best division of football, column, and that's what Brian said there. It's like dominoes falling here. It can, even if the Chiefs win, it doesn't just have an effect on the Broncos, it has an effect on the Raiders, the Chargers, and vice versa. So it's going to be a good weekend of football, isn't it?
Yeah, going to be a very interesting weekend. I have it being a very good weekend for the Broncos because I've gone out my own with the Washington football team beating the Raiders, and I have the Chargers losing and the Broncos winning. So I'm expecting it to be fantastic. Let's see. But even if I have egg on my face on Monday night, we have a fantastic game to look forward to on Monday. That is going to be a really, really good one I imagine. But look, as always, I think it'll be a really interesting Sunday. There will undoubtedly be many surprises, and let's see what happens.
Brian, any final words before we go?
Well, unfortunately, Mark couldn't be here this weekend for the main show in terms of the picks and everything that we discussed tonight. But I imagine he'll be on tenterhooks by the time he arrives in on Monday's show, with leading up to what is probably the biggest. I would argue it's probably the biggest Monday Night Football game we've had this season. In terms of that AFC, so it'll go a long way to deciding who wins that division. What a way to finish the weekend, and what a way to finish this particular weekend of games, week 13. And then come Monday, we'll see where both our teams are.
It's going to be a hell of 2 late nights. I need coffee already. Look at my eyes already going. Thanks so much for joining us. # Irish NFL Show, Irish NFL Show on YouTube, on Twitch, on podcast form, on Twitter at IRENFL. Thank you very much for joining us, folks. Thanks so much to Cynthia for joining us, Michael McQuaid, Colin Cronin, Brian O'Leary, and Mark Cockerell. Hi, Mark. Lads, enjoy week 13.
Take it easy.